Hello everyone, and welcome back to our modern day mystery school. Shall I drop the new name? Listen, there's a new name floating around. Academy Sophia. Remember that religion, science, philosophy, and art, whatever you as a human being dedicate your life to, that is your art. So remember that. Thank you for your time spent watching, for your thoughtful and insightful comments, and thank you to everybody for 6,017 subscribers and climbing. And to be fair, this channel has had some painful growth spurts. Very painful. And many subscribed here only for the audiobooks, which is Light on the Path. That's here for you, absolutely free. The Voice of the Silence is here for you as well, the 14 lessons. But this steady growth is coming from you, the Unfolding Consciousness crew. So thank you very much. This channel is all about you, as we are here simply to help get these ancient teachings out into the world, make them relatable, understandable, and applicable in all situations in the world of today. They may be ancient, but they're instructions for living today. Application in our modern world. And if you wish to bypass my rambling preamble, please feel free to skip ahead to the start of the actual book study and the book reading. Just click on the blue timestamp below. So it was so wonderful to have Eddie here. Eddie was here at Horda's house as our guest, and we had a blast. We had delicious vegan meals. We got to go see him play grand pianos in posh medieval churches. We shared walks along the River Dart and along the sea, and we even had, in this room, we had about 10 mediums and healers come to meet Eddie, and they wanted to meet Eddie and he wanted to meet them. They loved him and he loved them. And I say it often, but the New Age movement, okay, the New Age movement that we're all familiar with, all these gurus and goddesses, and you know exactly who I'm talking about. That's cherry-picked from these ancient teachings. So there was something to learn for them and for Eddie. It's fantastic. Eddie was interested in the practical application of these ancient occult therapeutics. And Eddie was particularly interested in how the mediums communicate with those who have transitioned, or as Eddie likes to call it, when someone passes away, he calls it being promoted. I love it. Promoted. So our textbook, Unfolding Consciousness, Exploring the Living Universe and the Intelligent Powers in Nature and Humans, written down by Dr. Eddie Villamoria. This is our textbook. It's 1,000 pages, over 1,000 pages, 4 volumes, remarkably well organized, a collection of these ancient teachings, the perennial philosophy with references and links. The references and links to thousands of years of study is in these books. So welcome everyone to book study number 36. We've been doing this for 36 weeks. These Sunday book studies will always be free, as they help to get the ancient teachings out into the world of today where they are so desperately needed. So please, may I ask, if you can, will you please share and subscribe and like if you can? It massages the algorithm, and everybody needs a well-massaged algorithm. So let's continue through Volume 2's Chapter 6, which is clarifying some common misconceptions. So we're going to talk about the distinction between soul and spirit. We hear those names tossed around. What does that mean? And the dual nature of manas, or mind, and the function of Antahkarana. We covered this in an entire episode not long ago, but right now we're on page 106. So our yellow post-it study notes for this week are insights from mediumistic phenomena, what you see in a séance room, and the composite nature of man's thoughts. Remember, you get 20% off the 4-volume set with the exclusive UC Book Study code, which is, you should know it by now, UC Book Study, and that's from the Shepherd Wallman website. So let's begin, okay? The distinction between soul and spirit. A detailed clarification of what is meant by soul was given earlier in Volume 2, which we're going to go back and cover, don't worry, where it was explained that soul, the word soul, is a generic term having the core meaning of carrier or a vehicle of any principle to its expression at a lower level. So let's say that again. Again, a soul is a generic term having the core meaning of a carrier or a vehicle of any principle to its expression at a lower level. Towards the latter half of the 19th century, spiritualistic phenomena was common at all these séance rooms. Most spiritualist writers distinguished only between body and spirit. That's body and spirit, and many of us still do. But a few spiritualists, like Allan Kardec, also mentioned a layer of abstract ethereal material serving as the connection, the vehicle, and covering between the spirit and the physical body of a person. They named this layer the perispirit. You may have heard that. The term is used by way of direct analogy with perisperm, which is the layer of nutritive tissue that surrounds the embryo of a seed in some flowering fruit-bearing plants. And I think it might be the tomato seed, as you say in America. Anyway, so the seeds that are enclosed in an ovary. So in any case, seance room manifestations were attributed to the activities of spirit. Now, Blavatsky wrote Isis Unveiled during this period of heightened interest in spiritualistic phenomena. One of the purposes of her enormous work being to explain the distinction between soul and spirit, okay? Blavatsky pointed out, pay attention here, Blavatsky pointed out that the majority of the trivial seance room manifestations were not the operation of the immortal spirit, rather the near automatic actions of the discarded terrestrial soul, elements of previously living men. So let's say that again. Blavatsky pointed out that the majority of all that was happening in the seance room, all these manifestations, that was not the operation of the immortal spirit, the non-ending, the eternal being. Rather, it was the near automatic actions of the discarded terrestrial soul elements of the previously living men. Now, we covered this in Death is Transition. That's the Kāma-rūpa, the desire body. Now, Table Volume 212, which we have coming up, shows a comparison between the divisions of the spiritualists with the subdivisions, according to occultism, by 19th and early 20th century ornithologist, which means he studied birds, and botanist Alan Octavian Hume. Alan Octavian Hume, along with his fellow Englishman, you'll know this fellow if you're a Theosophist, A.P. Sennett, Alfred Percy Sennett, esoteric author and scholar. Hume was privileged to be in contact with and actually receive communication from Blavatsky's adepts, the masters, the helpers of humanity. The division from Hume's article are based on teachings he received from Blavatsky and the master Kutumi, or the Mahatma Kutumi. Moving on to the dual nature, this is common misconceptions of the dual nature of manas, mind, and the function of the Antahkarana. A tremendous significance is attached in occult literature to the fact that manas, the mind principle, is a single principle in terms of man's constitution, yet it displays a dual function. So let's say that again. Manas, the mind principle, is a single principle in terms of man's constitution, yet it displays a dual function, higher and lower minds. So how does this come about? How do we get two minds out of one? Let a man carefully examine his own thoughts. Seriously, do you ever review what you're thinking? All of these things that come through your mind, do you ever review this colossal onslaught of thinking, thoughts, or do they just flow? Do you just let them flow? Despite the fact that humans may have countless millions of thoughts, it's true, it's never ending. We can generally assort them into two groups. Those thoughts that are impersonal, elevating, charitable, helpful, loving towards others, and those that are personal, demeaning, self-serving, and harmful towards his fellows. These two groups display the qualities of the higher mind and the lower mind. The former striving to ascend upwards towards its spiritual origin, and the latter is gravitating downwards towards the desire-ridden animal nature. So, a side note from me here, the best way to identify the lower self is it's the first one up. It's the first one up, and it's usually judgmental, it's cruel, it's selfish, extremely selfish, it's ignorant, it wants to be right all the time, it will judge others, and it will judge you. It will say that everybody else is a piece of crap, but you're the most important piece of crap. You're more important than they are, but you're still a piece of crap. That's how you identify the lower self. I know you know what I'm talking about. I even did some videos on TikTok of these two selves having a conversation together, the higher and the lower self. Think of the vices, and that is the character of the lower self. Ignorance, selfishness, fear, anger, all that, sloth, that's the lower self. The higher self, think of the virtues, easy, compassion, kindness, understanding, unconditional love. That is the higher self, and that's how I identify them. And the great battle that we talk about in all of these teachings. The great battle is not a spiritual battle taking place by some supernatural beings in the clouds above you. It is in you. It is inside you. It is the battle of the higher self being able to get the lower self under control. Now, this does not imply that the thought life of man can be apportioned at all times into two very watertight compartments, that he says, higher mind and lower mind. The former uncontaminated by the personal nature, and the latter tainted with self-seeking motives. So other than the saint, which is very difficult to find, someone who is perfect, or the irredeemable criminal, in the average man there will naturally be an intermingling of the pure and impure elements. However, in any one situation, one or another mind quality will predominate. Hence, the importance of the Antahkarana, which is the bridge serving as a bridge of consciousness, enabling the noblest elements of the personality and composite of man's lower mind to be assimilated and absorbed into the higher mind and spiritual ego. For more on this, we did do an entire episode. It's book study number 30, and I've titled it From Criminals to Geniuses, which are Eddie's words. It's the spiritual umbilical cord, the Antahkarana. Now, this brings us to a point where we can clarify the important difference between a human being and an animal. Now, Eddie reiterates here, he says, mind as system is unitary, and mind as function is dual. So let's take a look at this table, which is, I know you guys like these tables. I think Jonathan loves them. Jonathan, these tables are for you. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Here we go. Okay, table, volume 2, 12. The classification of man's nature by the spiritualists contrasted with the occultists. So we have 1, 2, and 3. Number 1, the spiritual soul or spirit. Okay, what is that? The spirit is an emanation from the absolute. Okay, an uncreated eternal. It is a state rather than a being. So it is a state of consciousness rather than an entity. The spirit is a state of consciousness. Love that. Number 2, in the spiritual soul or spirit, Eddie writes here, the higher or spiritual intelligence or consciousness or spiritual ego. Okay, a lot of times we hear ego and we think what we identify as the ego. Just listen, the spiritual ego, in which mainly resides the sense of consciousness in the perfect man, the part of you that is not contaminated by the lower self. So though the lower and animal consciousness coexists in the body, which we'll talk about. So this is the highest, and it is a state of being rather than a being, okay? Number 2, the animal soul or perispirit. The animal or physical intelligence or consciousness or ego, analogous means parallel. Analogous means parallel to, okay? So again, the animal soul or perispirit is the animal or physical intelligence or consciousness or ego, the animal intelligence. Okay, though proportionally higher in degree than the reason, instinct, memory, imagination existing in the higher animals. So are we an animal? We're going to talk about that more in these studies. But it says here, just proportionally higher in degree than the reason, instinct, memory, imagination existing in the higher animals. However, I would like to insert a side note here that many of the animals on this earth display more humanity, and humans display much more brutality, the brute nature. And I find that we have a lot to learn from animals. We share this planet. And the reason for these teachings is to ease the unnecessary suffering of all beings on our planet. So anyway, we're supposed to be higher. Sometimes we don't act that way. A lot of times. Okay, number 4, which is part of 2 and 2. Are you following me? Okay, the astral shape, the Kāma-rūpa, which means desire body. The body of desire, he's written here. A principle defining the configuration of 3. Okay, now we've talked about the phantom body. You've heard that when somebody has an amputation or loses a limb, they feel the energy in the shape of what was there. And the doctors are saying, oh, it's the memory of the phantom body. It's actually the astral body. It's an energy body there. And it doesn't lose shape. You can't destroy it. But if you lose the physical matter, the atoms, that's fine. I mean, you're still there. You're still intact. You're still whole with the astral shape, or the Kāma-rūpa. Okay. And then we have 3, the body, the one that a lot of us, the materialists, just say that's all there is, the world of the senses, sight, sound, taste, touch, hearing. Am I missing one? Okay. The body, the astral body, the linga sharira. And I think somebody was saying about the way I pronounced linga sharira. I think it's because if I said the linga sharira like that, it just doesn't sound right. If I say linga sharira, it sounds like I'm not trying. So if I say linga sharira, I'm trying, but am I saying it right? I don't know. Okay. The linga sharira, composed of highly etherealized matter. It, in its habitual passive state, the perfect but very shadowy duplicate of the body. Okay, there's stuff to be learned there. Let's go back and revisit those lessons that we talked about in Death is Transition on what we see, the Māyāvi-rūpa, what we see when we're looking at ghosts. Anyway, the perfect but very shadowy duplicate of the body, its activity, consolidation, and form depending entirely on the Kāma-rūpa, the desire body. Okay. Number 6 here, which is 2 and 3, the vital principle, or he's got Jiv Atma, and this is prana. This is the life principle. This is what activates living matter to life, or matter to living, if that makes any sense. The form of force, okay? Prana cannot be destroyed. You don't have an end. This life force that is you, what is vivifying this matter, you do not end. The matter will pass, but you are always. So prana, which he's saying, Jiva Atma, a form of force, indestructible. It is indestructible, and when disconnected with one set of atoms, like what's in your body as you return to the earth, it becomes attracted immediately by others. Prana never dies. All right? The vital principle, life, does not die. I love this. So beautiful. Thank you, Eddie. And the physical body composed wholly of matter in its grossest and most tangible form. And a lot of us, unfortunately, believe that that's all that there is. But you do not. You understand that there's more to our story, and I'm so grateful that you're here. Now, this week, we have another guest coming to Hortus House, Tim Wyatt, who's esoteric author. He is so much more than that. I'm hoping to have him on to the show, to these lessons, because we work together. He's actually the one who is editing down volumes 2 and 3 into the condensed versions of Unfolding Consciousness. He's a dedicated student of the ancient teachings. He's a speaker. He's a beautiful soul, and I'm hoping to have him on with us as a special guest as we move forward. And I love to work with Tim in the Academy Sophia. So let's see what happens. I'm also going to probably do the Colbert questionnaire with him because I love that. I love it. Thank you, Stephen Colbert. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Thank you for 6,017 subscribers. Please, 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 if you can, share these. If you're getting anything out of these, they'll always be free. Please, please share, like, subscribe. Let people know they're here. These are instructions for living here on planet Earth. That's what we're doing. This is not about moving this book. Eddie has a full-time job. This book is a collection of the teachings, making it easier for you to have access to them. This is a reference manual. This isn't about Eddie being famous. He's not worried about that. That's not what we're here for. We are here to serve, to get these out in the new millennium to humanity who might be listening. And I believe you are. If you've stayed this long, you are. And you're the reason we do what we do. I love you, and I'll see you next week. Mwah.